Teague here, and welcome to another She Talks Life interview. Today's guest is Mr. Kevin James, the former general manager of two very successful local news stations in Phoenix, Arizona. His ability to lead a large group of employees with passion and purpose was felt by many across the U.S. But it all came to an abrupt halt when he was not retained for his position after the media company he worked for was sold. But despite his setbacks, Kevin James is taking his wealth of knowledge on leadership training and development and pouring it all into a new book and podcast. The best part, he's taking all of us along for the ride. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin James.
Well, thank you. Yeah, along for the ride. Buckle up, huh?
Love it.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that great introduction. It was almost embarrassing to sit through.
That's okay.
So, yeah.
That is okay. Thank you first and foremost for allowing me to do this interview. You talked about some of the employees that worked under you. I was one of those people.
Right.
So I think this is a long time coming. So.
Yes, I would agree.
Awesome. Okay, so before we talk about the book and the podcast, I would love the audience to know about you. Okay. So a little bit about your family, a little bit about your past history, all the way up until the pandemic.
Okay. Well, born and raised in North Carolina.
Okay.
Spent my early life there, went to school there, got into business there.
Nice.
In the business of broadcasting. I went to broadcast school with the goal of being a sportscaster. Obviously, that didn't work out. My accent, I think, had a little bit to do with that. But in that time, I got on the business side of broadcasting. And over the years, spent time in Greensboro and Raleigh. And then in 2005, moved to Phoenix, which never thought I would move out west. But I can tell you, it was the best decision I ever made, not only for my career, but for my life. In the time I've been out west, I met my wife. I have 3 beautiful children, and we've really, built a beautiful life here. And from the professional side, in 2005, came to work for Meredith Corporation in Phoenix. They had a CBS affiliate at the time. Spent 8 years as their local sales manager, and then the company moved me to Las Vegas to run the revenue operations for their Fox affiliate in Las Vegas. That was 4 good years.
Nice.
Fun market to be in, especially for a Fox station. And then got the chance to come back to Phoenix. By that time, we had 2 stations. They had acquired the strongest independent in the country, KTVK, along with KPHO. So I was running revenue there. And at some point in 2018, got the opportunity to move into the general manager role and took over managing the entire operation. And was in that role for 3 years. And the final year, I also assumed the role of Senior Vice President of Revenue Operations for the group. The entire broadcast group, which included 18 television stations over 11 markets for Meredith.
Wow.
So that's kind of a trip down memory lane and gives you hopefully a good idea of kind of who I am.
Little snapshot.
Yeah.
So that's pre-pandemic. So now we're approaching March of 2020. The world has gone crazy, and most of us are being sent home. And I believe that's around the time that you actually got your promotion to no longer be just the GM of the station, but now you're overseeing multiple markets across the United States.
Right.
So I can imagine your ability to lead during that time had to kind of switch gears. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it really had to pivot.
Yeah.
And I even go back to the time when I took over as GM. I'd been GM a little over a year when the pandemic really started to get rolling, maybe a year and a half. And, when you get into a role like that, you think you're going to be focused on viewership and revenue. And then when something like the pandemic hits, the goals shift. They have to.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about COVID was there was no real historical perspective to draw from. There was no wise person to talk to. There was no one that had a good experience with this. So you were really trying to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good foundation built with your people, you're probably going to be dead in the water when things like that happen. So we did have to shift. But because we had really been a people-first focused operation, we were able to really change our entire workflow. We had to send people home really with a gun to our head, without the ability to budget, without the ability to plan, and with the main goal of keeping people safe and healthy, okay?
Yeah.
While still figuring out how to put a newscast on from someone's living room. or how to do
was
sales calls,
interesting.
right? Or how to do sales calls from a Zoom call and keep everybody motivated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And people do well. Some people do well from home and being a little bit more isolated. Some folks don't function well at all in that. So we were able to pivot quickly and effectively because of the foundation we had, the culture we had built, the people first environment that we stressed, and also the collaborative nature of our leadership and actually our entire employee population. Because there was so many ideas, so many issues that came up or possibilities that were uncovered because people felt comfortable enough to come with those. And it didn't matter what position they were in. So it was I'll put it this way, my tenure as GM and certainly as VP of Revenue Operations ended up being far different than I thought it would be. Which is a good thing.
You thought it was
know.
one way, it wound up being completely different.
Right.
And, I mean, I feel like as an employee of the station at that time, it really speaks to not just you, also the company, but just the ability to move quickly, but to lead well. And I believe as an employee, I could say that was felt from my perspective as well. Definitely done well. So let's talk briefly about the moment you knew you were going to be let go, right?
Yeah.
So you had just led the whole team and even other teams, around the United States through this transition of COVID. Then the merger is announced, blase, and then you're going to be let go. What is going through your head?
Well, when you get into broadcasting and you get to a certain point in an organization or in the business, you do know in your heart of hearts that sooner or later this could happen. And I always understood that the higher I may elevate in a corporation, there was a risk for this.
Okay.
It happens. And in some ways I was prepared for it. There were other ways I truly was not. I had spent the year leading up to that working with a new company on integrating systems, and they were great people. And very late in the process was when I was notified that they were going to make a change. What I'm about to say may be hard to believe for anybody that's lost their job in the past. But I can tell you that the overriding emotion I felt, or the overriding feeling I felt, wasn't fear or anger. Frankly, it was heartbreak.
Yeah.
And I will say the reason that is because how much I cared about our people.
Yeah.
How much I believed in what we were building.
Yeah.
I was so proud of the progress we had made, the victories we had had.
Yeah.
We had a lot of successes in what I would have to say is the toughest working environment anyone had ever had thrown at them.
Yeah.
And so not being to think forward and say, okay, there's going to come a day where I'm not going to be able to have access to these people in this way. That was really the hardest thing to wrap my mind around, because the business side of it, I've seen it happen to others, and knew that there was always a possibility. And when your company's sold, the possibility really grows.
Yeah.
And they had every right to make that decision. Where I was really hurt, not because of them, but where I was really hurt is just being disconnected from the people that I had really been in the trenches with.
Absolutely. So to that point, there was a period of time when you knew you were going to be laid off to your actual last day at the station.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks.
Two and a half weeks.
So for some people that may seem like not a lot of time.
Yeah.
But if you're having to go into work every single day, knowing that in 2 weeks you no longer have a job.
Yes.
What did that 2 weeks look like for you? What was your emotions? How are you feeling going into work every day?
So there's two sides to it. One, it was so the difficult side is you're going in and every day you're faced with this reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember my
And
wife.
everyone knows it.
Yeah, everybody knows it because it came out on email. And I remember my wife told me one time, she goes, Kev, I wish, it was funny how she put it. I felt like it was my mom. She said, I wish I didn't have to send you there every day.
Oh.
Because you were kind of getting hit in the face with it every day going in.
Yeah.
Here's why I believe it was a blessing that it happened this way.
Mm-hmm.
I was struggling, no doubt. But there was a lot of people there in the building that once they found out, they were struggling as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That 2.5 weeks, as difficult as it was, allowed certain people to come forward to me and share what was on their heart. It allowed me the opportunity to share what was on my heart with some folks. Which, if I would have just found out the day of and had to pack a box and go,
Yeah,
it would have been far harder to touch those people.
definitely.
And so I always said that 2-week period, I knew the feedback I was getting was accurate because, hey, these people had, no one has a reason to lie to me anymore. Okay. So you knew what you were hearing was true.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And what they were, for some of them to share the impact I'd had on them, the emotions that were shared with people at every level of our organization. I mean, I have no problem telling you to sit on a sofa in my office with some of my department heads and leadership teams and honestly cry together because of what we had built and what we meant to each other.
Yeah.
As hard as it was on one hand, I probably wouldn't have it happen any other way because it gave everyone involved a chance to share from the heart what we meant to each other, especially coming out of a couple of year stretch that was challenging to say the least.
Yeah.
So
Having a title as a GM or a leader is one thing, but to go through something like that and still think about the people, and to still, think about them first. Like to me, that is, it's a testament to your character and a testament to what a true leader does in a situation like that, because there's no doubt that when that merger happened, there was a lot of emotions that, like you said, everyone was feeling in different levels. I personally wasn't in the office at that time, but still working for the company, and I got the email. To be quite honest, I was actually on maternity leave.
Yeah, I remember.
And so I hadn't been checking my email, so I think I got it after you had left.
Yes,
like you were already gone. And I was just blown away. And in fact, there was so many different emails that I was reading. I was like, what is happening? But that one very specifically stuck to me because I knew the leadership wouldn't be there. And not to say that no leadership would be there.
Sure.
It was just what we were used to. And, again, speaking of how we transitioned through COVID,
right.
That whole familiarity would not be there. So,
well, getting back to something that you said, and as far as the leadership that came in, I can't speak to that. I'm sure they're doing fine. But getting back to something that you had mentioned about, as a testament to me that, how I felt and thinking about the people. And that's, good leadership. And a lot of people would not do that. One thing that I think we make a mistake on quite a bit is we equate titles to leadership. And there's a lot of people, a lot of folks, and I've worked, over the years with some that have pretty good titles and aren't maybe great leaders. To me, if you focus on anything more than the folks that you are entrusted with, then you're already off base. And once again, I knew if I took this role as a general manager, the time could come when I was let go for something other than performance. But I also knew that I signed up to do the best job I could, not only for the company, but more so for the people, till the day I left. And that's what I tried to do. And, to me, if a good manager, a good leader understands the importance of the personal connection with your staff or with the people that you work with, your coworkers, your peers. If you don't, you miss a big part of that managerial or leadership journey.
We come to the place where you are let go.
Yeah.
And you take that heartbreak, as you spoke about earlier. Somewhere along the lines, though, you were able to take that same passion and push it into what I like to consider a greater calling. Because it's one thing to be over a certain or a set amount of people, right? Hundreds of people or thousands of people, regardless. You're still in a space where your leadership skills or your knowledge and wisdom are confined. But when you talk about a book or when you talk about a podcast, you are opening up, the marketplace of people that can actually feed from this wealth of knowledge that you've gained. So first, kudos to you for taking that information and, all of the years that you've worked in broadcast and different roles in leadership and move that over or transition it over into something that a lot of other people can glean from. So let's talk about your book. What is the name of it, first of all?
Well, it could change.
Right.
I've went through a few, but right now I think it's going to be called My Pathway Through the Trenches.
Nice.
And, it really focuses on some of the path I was on and some of my leaders were on with me, and how we persevered through some of those times, but also, and probably more so, focuses on kind of the building blocks of how to build a culture, how to lead effectively, and how to best reach the people that you're entrusted with, build a healthy culture, the importance of that. At one point I was thinking about, because we had to do so much in those last 3 years and some of our resources have been cut, and how do we do more with less? And
that was huge.
Yes, and there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
But most of them are grounded in the impact you have on others.
Yeah.
And getting them to not reach their potential, but blow through what they thought their potential was. And so there's a lot of that wrapped up in the book. And when you think about my pathway through the trenches, that's what I always thought of myself in any position I had in a managerial leadership role, was someone that was willing to get in the trenches with my folks if they needed me to. And being willing to not only be that servant leader, but also be one that led from the front. Not as far as credit goes, but I was never expecting any of my folks to work any harder than I would. So
that's awesome. And in terms of the podcast, will it be some of the same information?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Love it.
I sat down and really started jotting down possible topics for podcasts, and it's nuts how much I came up with, that I feel is valuable, and that could really, that people could benefit from hearing. So
absolutely. So can you explain what that title means to you?
It means leadership top to bottom. Once again, I go back to something I said, that just because you have a title, you're in a place of prominence in an organization, doesn't mean you're a good leader. Right. And just because you don't have that doesn't mean you don't have a role to play in leadership.
Absolutely.
To me, there are ways that people in prominent positions in an organization, there are practices they can incorporate. There are ways they can look at things. There are things they can do to connect with their people to make them better leaders. And even if you don't have the skill set I used to say all the time I would never ask my people to do something I wouldn't do. Well, when I became a general manager, that didn't make any sense because I had never written a newscast or produced one.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd never went out and filmed the story. So that didn't make a lot of sense. And what I wanted my folks to know is that I will never ask you to come in and put more of an effort than I would. I'm going to be right here shoulder to shoulder. I may have to be guarding a different front than you are, but I'm going to do it as hard as you do. That's my pledge to you. But also, I would challenge the staff and my leaders and everyone that worked at the station that everyone had a role to play in leadership. Whether you've been with an organization 30 years or 3 weeks, you have something to contribute. There's something that you have experienced in your workday or maybe your life that if you're willing to share and you have your eyes open to recognize those possibilities, that information can help someone get better or maybe even get through a tough situation.
Absolutely.
And you have to have your eyes open to recognize it. So I would challenge our staff that everyone had a role to play in leadership. And if you have an idea, share it. Not every idea is going to be good, but one might be great. And my leadership team needed to foster a culture where people felt comfortable sharing. So when I think of leadership for the trenches, it's not that if you're a general manager of a station, you need to be, in the bowels of the station and in the newscast with your fingers. That's not what it's about at all. Because you need to empower people to do their jobs. But they need to know you are with them. And for the people that maybe don't have, or maybe your middle management, maybe your leadership team, and maybe the folks working for them, they need to know and believe that they have a role to play as well, and they need to be empowered to play it. So that's really what it's about for me.
Right. I think we spoke a lot about management, but I feel like there's an underlying tone here, though, that this leadership training can be for anyone.
Absolutely.
And any type of, whether they're in an actual leadership position
Yes.
or someone that's, not.
Yes.
So who specifically did you write this book for, and who will your podcast be for?
Well, the easy answer would be anybody. I'm going to go back to something, though, before I answer that.
Yeah.
I want to also tell you that, and you're right, that I was speaking to some degree on management. But at our stations, with our operation, I was very transparent that every day I came in with a couple of goals. One, figure out how I can get better that day. The day you stop trying to improve is the day you need to find something else to do. 2, I want to recognize an opportunity and act on that opportunity to help someone improve or to help someone get through a situation. And my challenge with that, I ask everyone in that operation to join me in that. Not managers, not leaders, everybody. When I took over that operation, there was a lot of people walk down the hall or be in the elevator and not even talk to people. I don't see how you do that. Life's tough enough without not liking where you go to work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would challenge them to not only, we were Arizona's family, live our brand inside these walls, but have your eyes open.
Yeah.
How can you help someone get better? You may be 3 weeks in, but you may have experienced something, or you may have gone through something in your life, and if you have your eyes open and you share it, it could help somebody.
Absolutely.
And that's what now, did everybody buy into it? Of course not, but a lot did, and we were better for it. Who the podcast is for?
Yes.
I think it's for anyone that, one, believes that learning and improving is a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop. I think it's for anyone that takes their career, their performance personally, which I certainly did. I've been told that I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I have a 2x4, and I'm fine with that.
Love it.
It's for people that understand, it's for folks that understand the importance of connection and people first management. The one thing, if if we learned anything in the pandemic, it was the importance, it was the focus on mental health and how important it is.
Huge.
It's the need to be connected with your people because all of a sudden they weren't there at your fingertips. And also being willing to understand there may be a different and better way of doing things. If you would have asked me before the pandemic, would you be okay with your salespeople working from home? I'd have been like, absolutely not. Well, that was short-sighted because honestly, we hired adults and they weren't looking for a free ride.
Right.
They were wanting to go out and make it happen. It didn't matter if they had to show up in an office or not. And we didn't miss a beat when they went home.
I feel like it improved, right?
Well, a lot of ways it did. A lot of ways it did. Now, would you want to have for a long-term plan, have weathercasts and newscasts from somebody's living room? No.
The bloopers, though,
the outtakes were fantastic. Absolutely.
They were amazing.
And also the public understood why we were doing it. They got it. But you wouldn't want to be doing it 3 years in to the pandemic. But it opened our eyes to so many other possibilities.
Absolutely.
And so, but really, I will say the podcast, the book, will probably really be for anyone that understands the investment in themselves and the importance in investment in others.
Awesome.
Is really what I would say.
So it's not just professional development.
Oh, no.
It can be personal development as well.
I believe leadership, I will say this, one thing I didn't cover in my bio is that, I come from a spiritual home. My grandfather was a minister. My mom and dad are spiritual folks. I believe that leadership is a higher calling. I believe that investing in others is important not only for your development, but it's important in living a purpose-driven life.
Absolutely.
And that's how I always try to look at it. And so, that's kind of what drives me. That's why after moving on from what I was doing and being asked, hey, what kind of opportunity you're looking for now? Early on, I didn't have an answer. I didn't know. But I could tell everyone that I want one that will give me a chance to have an impact, the biggest impact I can have on the most people.
Yeah.
Because in those last 3 years in my time at Arizona's Family, and the last 2 years in the pandemic, and we forget, one thing we didn't mention, the election, which was crazy too.
My gosh, I
so it was another
that.
challenge that came up.
Yeah.
I loved what I did, and I'm a lifelong broadcaster. But what I was truly passionate about during that time was the people.
There is something that I've heard you say quite often, and
boy.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
And that is personal investment in others is the key to good leadership.
Yes.
You just spoke about this, but I wanted to give an example of this. And then you kind of actually already answered this question, what that means to you. But I remember you had just barely started working for the station, and I had been there a couple of years, and I don't know if you remember this, but at the time, all of the assistants in the building, any time during lunch, one of us would have to cover the front desk, right? You remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so it was my time to cover the front desk.
I think we changed that, by the way.
That's where I was going with that.
Yes.
So it was my time to cover the front desk, and there was a situation that happened where I felt extremely uncomfortable because of just a situation, let's just say that. And I remember you were fairly new, you were my boss's boss, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna send him an email and see how he responds. And not really thinking that it would change, but just, hey, here's something for you to know, here's something to keep on your radar. And I wanna say within that same day, within a couple of hours, I was sitting in your office and you're like, tell me what happened. I explained the situation, and I want to say within a week, that whole, the whole how we did things was changed.
Yeah.
Like we got an email from HR and was like, the new protocol is this. And I'm sitting there going, oh, okay. And it wasn't that we didn't have good protocol set in place. It was just the fact that you cared to even know, like, okay, what happened? How are you feeling?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
this needs to be changed
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
So to me, that goes back to what we've been talking about, the personal development, and not just caring about how you're performing. Because at that point, you know, I would always consider me having a pretty good work ethic, but you know, when you work for a company that actually cares about you on a personal level, then it's like, okay, I can work even harder, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I laugh at that because I remember that time. And I can tell you that I had a couple of passionate meetings with the other leaders there at the station. I was not GM at the time. I was director of sales.
Yes. Yep.
And that was one of the first times I kind of put my foot down saying this needs to change. And I made a very passionate plea about why. I always felt that, you know, not to get too deep into it, but especially once the politics got really toxic, and we had so many people coming in because we were a media outlet, that if there was going to be threatening people coming in, why would how can I have someone down there being at the forefront of that, and I'm up on the third floor,
safe and secure,
safe and sound, and I'm like, you know, this I'm sorry, I can't, I don't buy into this. So we had to make a lot of changes about that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll go one step further as far as personal investment. Now, I was blessed in my career because at different times, people made personal investments in me. Most of them know who they are because I've told them how much it meant to me. And, you know, there's a saying out there, the only person you should ever try to get even with is someone that's helped you.
That's a good one. I'm stealing it.
And, well, well, I stole it from somebody. I didn't make it up. But, and I firmly believe that the way I needed to pay back those people that invested in me was to, I hate to, cliches, but pay it forward and invest in someone else.
Yeah.
You're reminded of that time. I'm reminded of a time where I brought you in, like I did everyone in the department, to get to know you. What do you want to do? What'd you tell me? Do you remember?
I want to be the next Oprah.
The next Oprah. The next Oprah.
Yes, absolutely.
I said, tell me what that looks like. And you did. But what you did that was a little different. There's a lot of people that talk about their goals, an idea, and don't do anything to make it happen. They hope it's given to them. You not only came with things you had already produced, but you came with God bless, a proposal on how to get sponsors.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of my sellers would have done that at that time. And it wasn't long before we had you on the air.
Yes.
We had you on the air on our lifestyle show. I don't say that to toot my own horn, but I say that, number one, to give you credit for how you approach that. But this is just one example of making a personal investment in someone and what you were doing at the time, which was great, fantastic, valuable member of the team, and what you're doing now and where you're going to take it. These are the same kind of things that was done for me at different times in my career by people that didn't have to. They saw something in me, and they also knew that I wasn't asking for a free ride, you know. And so I've always tried to be very mindful of that, because anyone that thinks they get somewhere because they were just that great, I mean, really, come on.
Right.
And I certainly didn't get that. I mean, I was, I got to where I was and has been successful. A big part of that has been the belief others had in me, and I didn't let them down.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
That's fantastic. And one more thing that I was going to bring up was actually when I proposed me being on air. I remember you having a box. I believe it was a box full of cards from different people.
Yeah, I still have it.
Yeah, over the years that you helped. They were thank you cards, thank you notes. And I remember you saying very specifically, you do what you do because of this. You know, it's not necessarily, I mean, you love broadcast, but
Sure.
It wasn't for that. It was for the people. So bringing it back to the book and the podcast, having this platform where you now can impact so many more people with not only your leadership values and different things that you've learned, but just your passion for people. And I feel like that's what people will really get from your book and from your different episodes on your podcast, is that your passion for the people, I think sometimes is not always common in leaders.
No,
it's not.
It's not, because it can be uncomfortable too.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll go back first of all to that box of cards. It's very easy in the business world to get caught up in the daily, weekly, quarterly goals that are set in front of us. Are we going to hit budget? How is our ratings looking? And you get so focused on that you can lose perspective on the things that have gotten you there. Okay, and you can really start focusing on other things, and not that you shouldn't be, and totally stop focusing on others because you become just so short-term goal driven. I used to tell folks that outside of the pictures and the knickknacks from the pictures of my family and the stuff my kids had made me that were in my office, the most valuable possessions in my office were those cards. Because as I would tell my leaders, because some of them would struggle with it, my leadership team, in 20, 30 years, no matter what business you're in, but let's say you're in sales, you're probably not going to remember the budgets hit or the bonuses had or the success or in news, the nights that you were number one in the ratings. In 20 years, my hope is that I can look around and take measure of the folks that have let me know the impact I've made on them. And on those cards, most of them was telling me, you made me a better seller, or you made me a better person. And that goes back to, a purpose-driven life. That goes deeper than revenue goals. That goes deeper than viewership goals. That goes different. It has really not a lot to do with the short-term goals that we have to hit. Don't get me wrong; they're not. I'm not saying they're not important.
Right.
But there's another side to it too. As far as people management and some of what we're talking about, it's hard because when you get into a career, a lot of times you're told you have to have professional distance. You have to keep your, especially when you get into leadership, or management.
Yes.
You have to have a distance, and there is truth to that. But you can bond and connect with your people in an appropriate way, without crossing lines, without compromising. You can be transparent with your people without sharing too much, without compromising. And that's where I think it's tough, because some folks, it's just not, it just doesn't come natural to them, which is fine. I get it.
Yeah. That's where your leadership training will help.
Absolutely. I hope so.
Where can people find your book? Because we know you're still working on the book.
It's not done yet.
You're still working on it. You're still working on your podcast, which I'm super excited about. I know you have a LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
Your website is being worked on. Your new social media platforms is being worked on. So that's amazing. If someone wants to contact you right now, they would follow you on LinkedIn. Is it?
Yes.
Just Kevin James? Is that how?
Yeah, I think it's Kevin James is but if you search for Kevin James,
not
come
the
up pretty
actor.
quick. Not the actor. I always like to joke that I am like ungoogleable. It's like the ultimate anonymity, because you have to go through like 10,000 pages of the comedian before you get to anything about me, which is
I
great.
love him, by the way.
He's great. He's great. But yeah, it's LinkedIn's the best way to contact me right now.
And that's perfect. So once your website and your new social media platforms is all together, it'll be linked on your LinkedIn so that people can find you and find your book. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have another interview where we release the book.
Yes.
So
yes.
more information.
I just need to get it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, I get it.
Yes.
I get it.
It's sometimes some days are easier than others.
Completely understand. Is there any last minute things you'd like to add before we close?
I will also just say that what happened to me can happen to anybody. And losing a job in the manner that I did was tough.
Yeah.
It can wreck you. And I hope that over time, some of what I'm able to share will help people that find themselves in that situation, that wonder what's next, that fight off the depression that comes with something like this, the fear that comes with something like this, the anxiety, all of those things I felt too. And having the courage to get back up, you take that punch, you get back up and you keep going. You recognize the impact you have had and can have. And if I can help folks in similar situations move forward in a healthy manner, that's another goal of mine. So.
And I think that's very pivotal post-COVID. Because COVID was traumatic for so many different reasons. And, when we talk about even the landscape of work, right? Like so many people are finding themselves back at work that didn't think that they were going, after retirement, or so many people like me is going to become a full-time entrepreneur. The landscape of just life and how we live our everyday life is different. So to have this type of content where, it's a leader that not only has led a large group of people, but has also been in the trenches, that can share that knowledge along the way. I think it's very vital. And
well, there's also one other side to that.
Yeah.
Because everything you just said is totally accurate. There's also one other thing that I hope folks that are with companies get out of this, and that is whether we like it or not, whether we want to talk about it or not, the power shifted to some degree from company to employee.
Yeah.
I read all the time about the Great Resignation, but it's not inaccurate. You had folks decide, I'm going to do something else. I am not going to do this. I was working from home. I want a hybrid type deal. You're not offering, I'm going to go find it. That's a perk. I don't want to do this anymore. I think I'm underpaid. The power shift was so great when you look at turnover. When you look at mental health, we had folks get out of the business, not because they had a better job, but they said, I can't keep going like this. And so one of the things that has changed is that power shift, and means that the connections you have with your staff become even more important. Because the days of saying, well, just do what I tell you, do you want a job or not?
Most people are going, maybe not.
Good luck
maybe
with
not
that.
Here. Exactly.
If that's your approach, good luck with that.
Yes.
Let me know how it goes. We all have to evolve. Everything evolved. And some of the companies that I'm familiar with, some have recognized that and really started to do well in that post-COVID world. And some are continuing to struggle. So,
well, they can tune into your podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
Get some
Absolutely.
tips and read your book. I know I'm super excited. I can't wait for it to come out, the book and the podcast. So I believe you'll be doing weekly segments with the podcast.
Definitely.
Awesome. So we'll be able to catch those tidbits all across social media, and I'm excited. I'm super excited.
So am I.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'm so excited, if you can't tell, for the book to come out, so keep writing.
Thank you.
But ladies and gentlemen, this has been another interview with the She Talks Life team. I'm your host, JT. Thank you so much for watching.